Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and thank you especially to our guest speaker, Makaelah Murray, who I'll give a brief introduction for. She is a first-generation MS1 at David Geffen School of Medicine and a part of their Prime LA cohort. And being in Prime LA, an emphasis of her medical school education will be placed on serving the underserved throughout her medical journey, and she will graduate in 5 years after obtaining a master's degree in addition to her MD. And Makaelah started off her educational and athletic journey at San Joaquin Delta College, a community college in her hometown of Stockton, California. She then transferred to Howard University, a historically Black institution in Washington, D.C., to continue her education while competing on the women's soccer team at the D1 level. After graduating in 2021, she came back to California, where she spent 2 gap years preparing for and taking the MCAT, applying, and working at Genentech. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, guys. So I can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen. I prepared some slides, nothing too wild, just hopefully something that can help you guys get an idea more of me. And yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I will do slideshow mode. So yeah, as Lucia referenced, my name is Makaelah. I started off as a community college student at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton, my hometown. I then transferred to an HBCU, and now I'm here at the David Geffen School of Medicine. But my early life, as you can see here, I'm from the area that I circled on the map. So South Stockton. Grew up in Weston Ranch, which is really near to French Camp. I'm not sure where everyone is calling from, but if you're from the Northern Central Valley at all, I'm sure you've heard of any of these areas. And I put a picture of my parents here because they are 100% the reason for why I'm at where I'm at today. And I couldn't have gone through, my childhood and life without their support. They've supported me every step of the way. And as mentioned in my intro, I am a first-generation college graduate and now med school student. And so, even though they didn't necessarily navigate the same path, they've always supported and done what they could for me, which I really appreciate. And a huge part of my life growing up was playing soccer. As you can see here, this was me playing in high school, and I absolutely loved soccer. And my parents instilled in me the fact that I did need to go to college, which I'm super grateful for. And wanting to combine my love of soccer with wanting to go to college, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to college for soccer. Everything is going to be all good. And I was gearing up to do that. And then in high school, I ended up tearing my ACL my sophomore year, obviously sort of pushing back my timeline of making my dreams come true in terms of going to college to play soccer. But I was able to rehab back, get back on the field. And then a couple months later, I ended up tearing my other ACL. So that was obviously really devastating and basically just restricted my ability to actually go on to play collegiate D1 soccer, which was my dream. And so the reason that I tell that story is because that's actually how I ended up at San Joaquin Delta College. So I knew that I didn't want to give up on my dream of playing collegiate soccer. And so the only way that I sort of saw, that I could still try and make this a reality was by going the community college route. So I was able to rehab back, get back on the field, and go to community college in my hometown, which was a great experience because, again, I was so close to home with my parents' support, which was really crucial and necessary, especially, coming back from injury a second time. It was like a huge mental battle. And so I decided to go to Delta. And that was obviously a hard decision, I think, especially with the stigma that is associated with community college. We all know, obviously, being here, that those associations are wrong. But coming from the high school that I did, I was like one of few people to attend community college. So I definitely was sort of the odd man out. But honestly, it was the greatest decision I could have made in my life. And it was actually my orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Winter, who encouraged community college along with my parents. Like, these were the only people in my life that were like, yeah, it's a great option. You still get to play soccer and see what you can make of your dreams and whatnot. So I just decided to go. And it wasn't all fine and dandy. It was definitely very grueling and tiresome competing at that level, especially coming back from injury. And I thought it would be funny to add this photo of me here actually sleeping in the front row of class, just to show that, there are bumps along the way. It's not easy. You're going to be tired and it's going to suck at times. But it's just a part of the process, and you will get through. It will be better. That was actually in my calculus class. So, just, it sucks. It really does. But I promise you it gets better. And yeah, being at community college was literally the greatest sort of eye opener for me. So something that I also didn't mention, my injuries actually are what inspired me to want to pursue medicine, because, like I mentioned, my orthopedic surgeon, he was so impactful in his ability to encourage me to still pursue my dreams, to acknowledge me as more than just someone he was going to be operating on, but rather, he really made me feel as though he was invested in me. And so I went to community college with the idea in mind that I would be pre-med and I was going to transfer in 2 years to a university. And so, playing soccer, going to class, it was hard. It was really hard. I struggled to adjust. But I'm so glad that I started at the community college level because, the class sizes were so small that I was able to get that sort of like one-on-one mentorship from my professors and learn, what I needed to do to perform better in class, to adjust to college. And yeah, I think I really learned how to be a student at community college. And it really kind of helped set me up for the rest of my undergraduate career. And so, yeah, I spent 2 years at community college doing all the pre-med recs. And I was actually set up to tag to UC Davis. So the California community colleges have a tag program. Not all UCs can participate, but I knew that Davis did participate. So I ensured that all of my classes aligned with the tag program. And I was set to tag there regardless of soccer because I knew at the end of the day that I would be able to, that I still gave it a try, my dreams. And so, yeah, I was set on tagging to Davis. And then I just so happened to meet this individual who tries his hardest to get Bay Area kids to HBCUs on scholarship. And again, I'm very close to my parents, and I never thought about going very far at all. So when he talked to me, he was like, yeah, you should really consider, the HBCU experience. You should go to a college and a university that was made for you in a time when you weren't going to be allowed into universities because of the color of your skin. And so that really spoke to me, but I was still kind of, hesitant about going that far. But we ended up sending my video to a couple different schools, and it ended up working out with Howard. And so as you can see here, I ended up taking a leap of faith and transferring to Howard University on a soccer scholarship. And so, yeah, then I went to Howard, and at Howard, I transferred there, I believe, in 2019. So I got there, I was ready to go. I was playing soccer. I was like, finally, like my dreams are coming true. I'm so happy. I know how to be a good student. Like, we are good to go. And then the pandemic happened. So I was only there for 9 months before I had to come home. And honestly, like my entire 9 months was spent traveling for soccer. So again, that was really hard to like balance classwork, and all of those things. But I will say it was like so beautiful to be in that university with so many Black people. It was the first time that I had been in like a predominantly Black space, that a space especially that was made just for Black people. And it was so empowering and really cool just to see us show up in all different ways, shapes, and forms, and all be sort of grinding towards the same mission. And so, yeah, at Howard, when I got there, like I said, I was playing soccer. I also knew that I needed to get into a research lab since I was on the pre-med track. So I was finally able to get into a research lab because that was really hard to do at the community college level, although not impossible. There's stuff out there that allows for that to happen. But, combining that with my soccer, it was difficult. So I found a research lab at Howard, and really just, I was on the pre-med grind, which a lot of you know about. So it was okay. It did suck having to go online, but nonetheless, I prevailed. I ended up graduating, as you can see here on the right. And actually, one day when I was in the biology building at Howard, before I had to go home, I had already started thinking about what I wanted to do after graduation, because I knew I was going to take at least one gap year before applying to med school. And I just so happened to see a posting for an internship at Genentech, and it was their HBCUI initiative. So they have explicit outreach to HBCU students to recruit them to come and do internships at the company. And I knew that, I knew nothing about biotech. I knew nothing about that side of medicine. So I decided to apply and see what the deal was. And I was able to secure my internship. I started in product development and global clinical operations. And contrary to what that sounds like, I wasn't in the lab making, the drugs. I was actually overseeing and supporting the actual clinical operations of the clinical trials, which I really enjoyed. I didn't even, again, know that that was a possibility. But I learned so much, and it was still a clinical experience that really helped inform sort of my progression into medicine and towards medicine. So yeah, I started as an intern. I did my internship for 8 months, and then I was actually able to go full time as a clinical operations lead, and more explicitly support our global clinical trial. So I was overseeing a study in South Africa and learning the infrastructure there, which was really empowering. And then I also worked a lot in our advancing inclusive research space. And the whole goal there is to increase Black and Latinx representation in clinical trials because there are such huge disparities there. And so one way that I was able to contribute to that was via my creation of the patient compensation calculator, which you can see I presented here at a Drug Information Association conference in the past year. And essentially the goal of this calculator was to reduce financial burden for those enrolled in clinical trials. And, there is some finding that obviously people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are less likely to enroll in clinical trials as a result of having to take time off work and not being able to afford to do all of those things. So we saw this calculator as one way to help mitigate that problem. And I say all of that to say, you know, I think people hear of Genentech, not Genentech per se, but anything in like big pharma and instantly get scared and think that, you know, it's just a rat race for who can find the drug first and sell it for the most expensive. And there are companies out there that exist and don't operate in that model. And so I was really happy to work for Genentech and experience that side of medicine and learn. And then, you know, even within that, they have really great perks. So on the bottom left here is a photo of me and my friend Audrey, who I met in my internship, and that was us at the Genentech suite at a Warriors game. So they do take care of their employees and, you know, show you how to have a good time while still being equitable and diverse. So I really appreciated that. And then in terms of, so this is sort of everything that I did in between. So before transferring to Howard, I'll start with the right top photo that you can see the people wearing red shirts. So I was actually a part of a program which still exists today called Leadership Education for Aspiring Physicians. And it's hosted through Stanford Office of Diversity and Medical Education. I think it's COE, or they changed the acronym. It's like CODME. You can Google it and find it. It's still a program that runs today. The acronym is LEAP. And so within this program, I was able to identify an issue within a community of my choosing and create a solution to address it. And so at the community college level, I saw how so many Black and Brown individuals kind of get sucked in by the system and, you know, don't necessarily consider all of the ways that they can transfer from community college and be successful in doing that, especially within the athletic realm. I think a lot of times people in athletics at that level feel as though if I don't get a scholarship, I can't transfer because there's no other financial aid out there for me. And so I created, again, with the help of LEAP, this empowerment conference called Be More Than Your Sport, to empower student athletes at the high school and community college level to consider other avenues in terms of enrolling and pursuing higher education. And within that, one of the requirements of the program was to write a policy brief. And the policy brief that I wrote was on youth engagement in Stockton and how it's so poor and how it could be better. And I actually was able to present that to the mayor of Stockton. And so that brings me to the photo on the left, which you can see. Mayor Tubbs is standing in the middle here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. And that's me down below. So as a result of presenting my policy brief to him, he actually offered me a position in his summer of service fellowship, where I was able to actively work in the Stockton community and, again, identify some of these problems and create a solution to address it. And so in that realm, I identified a park in a poorer area of town and saw, you know, that it was trashed, and then actually canvassed and surveyed residents in the area and, you know, asked them how did they feel about the park and like their access to a safe place to take their kids and play and run and do all the things that, you know, enable people to be healthy. And after that survey, we found that residents were just not happy. And so I was able to galvanize the Summer Service Fellowship fellows to help us in doing a park revitalization effort. And this is everyone that was involved in that in the top left photo. And then when I transferred to Howard, I was able to partake in a medical mission trip to Costa Rica, which is the photo on my bottom left. And that's me with one of the Spanish interpreters, Jenny. And she really appreciated my ability to try and speak Spanish with her as best as possible. And we really, you know, were able to learn from each other a lot, which was an amazing experience. And, you know, seeing healthcare in a different country really changes your perspective. Obviously, we want to be cognizant of medical tourism and, you know, bringing supplies and resources to an area that maybe can't maintain what you brought. So, you know, people understand that those are the repercussions sometimes of mission trips. But overall, it was a really informative and empowering experience that I'm really grateful for, and further advanced, my mission to pursue medicine. And then in the middle photo, where I have my scrubs, mask, and glove on, that's when I was a medical assistant after coming home during the pandemic. So before graduating my senior year, I started working as a medical assistant in a clinic in the Bay Area, and it was a really interesting clinic. It didn't actually have to do with community health, which is what I am passionate about, but rather we did lots of like vitamin C treatments and more elective things in medicine. Again, something that I knew nothing about, so it was cool to see that side of medicine. And then after finishing that, I took the MCAT. Ended up taking it 3 times, which was an entire story in and of itself, but maybe I can leave that for Q&A at the end. But yeah, so worked as a medical assistant. Within that, was taking the MCAT, studying for it, and then graduated and started my job at Genentech, which brings me to the last 2 photos on this slide. Working at Genentech did allow me the opportunity to travel to a couple different countries as a result of me finally getting paid. And I have always wanted to travel. And so I was able to go to Thailand, which you can see in the second photo on the bottom. And then I also went to Turkey, and that's me and I think the Hagia Sophia, but I can't remember exactly. And again, more travel that I'm so grateful that I was able to do. I went to Greece and Peru. And now I'm here. So went through the entire process, ended up getting into UCLA traditional pathway, and then more specifically the Prime LA pathway. And again, I can talk a little bit more about the distinction in pathways in the Q&A if that's something that anyone is interested in. But in the middle, you can see this is right before my parents left and went back to Stockton. They helped me move in. That's me in my apartment now. And then on the right, you can see me at diaper day with Prime LA. We went to a community clinic, and we were helping mothers and children have access to diapers and wellness checks with a physician. And so it was amazing to be able to care for babies in the community. I absolutely fell in love with it already. And I'm in my 3rd week of Prime Summer, which is an orientation program before we meet with the rest of the class and get started. So that was a high-level overview of sort of my journey into medicine and how I got here. I really wanted to keep it short and really focus time on questions. So yeah, feel free to ask away. I'm an open book, and yeah.
Can you close your sharing? So
yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Makaelah, for sharing. So you guys have any questions, you guys can type it into the Q&A, and Makaelah will answer your questions. But Makaelah, I do have a question for you. So as you say, in family support is like, a big thing for you. So my question is like, without your family support, will you be at the position you are like today?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I'm extraordinarily fortunate to have the support of my family. And I know that that is not always the same for everyone. And so I would like to think that I would be in the same place. Maybe not the same institution. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to, do the things that I have been able to do. I think it probably would have definitely been harder, but I do think that, if you're determined to figure something out and do it, anyone can do it regardless of where they come from, what their background might be. So I think it probably would have added a couple more barriers along the way, but I would like to think that I would still have ended up in medicine.
Thank you, Makaelah. So another question is, how does your injury affect your journey to medicines, and how do you overcome your injuries and those phases of your life?
Yeah, so in the moment when I like first tore my ACL, the first time I didn't even know what an ACL was. I'm like, what are you like, what is this? I don't need like, can I still play? That's all I want to know. And so then I found out that I couldn't still play, and like that was really, really hard. But I was encouraged because, you know, people come back from an ACL tear all the time and still play, still have a very mobile lifestyle. And so I was good to go. I was ready to go. It was a little scary coming back, you know, just like the fear of like tearing it again, because you are more likely to do that. But I cared a little bit more about going and playing in college than I think getting hurt again. Um, and so then when I actually did end up tearing my other one, that really, really sucked. You know, mentally, it was really hard to like battle back from that times two. And you just feel like, why? Like, why me? This isn't fair. Like, especially because you see your peers, your teammates going on and committing and, you know, making their dreams come true. And you're the only one in this predicament of like having to sit back. And in that moment, it doesn't make sense. But honestly, like if it weren't for those injuries, like I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have realized that I want to pursue medicine. I wouldn't have like I don't think I would, I think it really makes a difference for people when they have a personal experience with medicine in some way. And the fact that I was able to encounter my orthopedic surgeon in such a way, it really just like changed my perspective on the impact of a patient-physician interaction and relationship. And one example of that is my own orthopedic surgeon actually couldn't even perform my second knee surgery because he had his own back operation. But he ended up still showing up for me. He, you know, assured me that he was going to be in the OR that day, just making sure that everything was good to go. And I like literally have chills like every time I like say that story, because you know it's this random guy that did not have to be invested in me whatsoever, but he chose to be. And I think that showed me that, you know, that's the sort of impact that you can have on someone's life. And that's ultimately I think what pushed me into medicine. And so yeah, I'm so like in the moment it sucks, but looking back, I'm so grateful. And I think honestly, like tearing each of my ACLs prepared me for taking the MCAT 3 times, because it was like, okay, you like go through something twice and you have to like go through that mental hurdle of like coming back from it and getting back on that horse and having to do it all again. And so, you know, when it came time for the MCAT, I don't think it burned me as much. Like it definitely sucked and it hurt having to take the MCAT 3 times, but it also wasn't something that I had never experienced before, you know, like failing and then having to get back on and try again. So again, in retrospect, like I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And you know, the valleys turn into high points. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Makaelah. So the next question is, what advice do you have to stand out when applying for internships? What do your interview like process look like?
Yeah, so I think you know, get to know the organization. So at Genentech, it didn't really matter to them that I had no biotech experience. If you can really just you know, frame your application in a way that makes you that expresses your curiosity and genuine interest to learn and willingness to learn, I think that speaks volumes when stepping into a space that you've never entered before. And then in terms of the interview for the internship, it was a panel interview. I think it was 3 people in total. And they just asked me questions about, you know, my various experiences that were on my resume. So soccer, the leadership education for aspiring physicians program that I told you guys about, also my time with the mayor of Stockton. And I think too, like not just talking about these experiences, but having references or like letters of rec from your directors in these programs so that they can back, you know, all the greatness that you put forward. Because I do remember, I think one of my interviewers from Genentech like reference the fact that I did have a letter of rec from Mayor Tubbs. That really spoke volumes to her. And it doesn't have to be from someone like the mayor, like, you know, that just was kind of happenstance. But just having someone that can vouch for, you know, your accomplishments, I think is really important.
Yeah, so the next question is, how do you prepare for med school interview, especially for UCLA?
Yeah, so funny enough, UCLA was actually my first interview of the cycle, which was absolutely nerve-wracking. And so what I did, I just did a couple mock interviews. So the woman who leads the LEAP program, Marcella Anthony, she stays in really good contact with her alumni, and she offers mock interviews. And so I did one with her, which was really helpful to get feedback. And I just like, honestly, I just asked my parents and, my friends to just call me and ask me random interview questions at any time of the day, just so I could like be constantly like thinking about and getting comfortable with like answering how I want to answer. I also got a couple books. I got the interview book by Ryan Gray. I got an MMI interview book that has a link. You can find these on Amazon. And I got another MMI one. Maybe I can like find the link and put it in on the comment section of Instagram if people will look there after the fact or something. Or I'll give you guys my email at the end so you can email me and I'll email the links as well. But yeah, those are various ways that I um prepared for my interview. Yeah, I just had people ask me interview questions. I also did a mock interview with someone else that was applying, like an actual student. So yeah.
Thank you, Makaelah. So, as you mentioned in your presentation, you took the MCAT 3 times. So one of the participants also take the MCAT 3 times and want to know that didn't it determine you from like applying to medical school, and did that seem like a concern for like the school when they look at your application?
Yeah, so I think I had my application in the first time I took the MCAT. I applied blindly, and then I got my MCAT score back a month later, and I automatically withdrew before my application was processed because I was like, this is just not cutting it. And so then, yeah, I withdrew, took a step back. That required me to take an extra year off. Then I took it again, only increased my score 3 points, which I was really disappointed with. And then I just what I call Hail Married it the last month, like right before. I think I took it again, I don't know, maybe in like April or May before the cycle opened for 2023 admitted students. And so yeah, I only studied for a month before the last one, albeit I was coming right off the second one. But the difference there was that I only did practice questions. So I got caught up in the trap of feeling like I just need to like not just like I was doing practice questions, but I was too caught up in the fact that I need to review content. If I get a question wrong, I need to read an entire section about the content that I missed. And that's just not active learning. That's not the way that most people's brains like process things. And so in my Hail Mary attempt, I literally just did content questions. And that increased my score by 5 points and made me feel as though I was in an appropriate range to apply. And so, like I said, there had been like incremental increases in my score. And from what I've heard from Ryan Gray, all med schools want to see is progress, whether that be your GPA, your MCAT or whatever. So I was under the stipulation that, hey, at least I showed that I can improve. And so I just went ahead and applied. And I mean, like, yeah, it's scary to know that like, oh, you took it 3 times and maybe someone took it 1 time and only did good. But, I think you have to trust what else is in your application because, they say it is a holistic process. I don't have any insight into that just because I've never been on an AdComs before. But I would argue that it is it is a holistic process, being that, I did get in after taking it 3 times. I did get in after going to community college. I did get in after going to HBCU. So I think these are all things that people say can hurt you, but people in admissions committee take into account everything and what makes your experience. So
Hey, thank you for sharing. So, I was wondering if you took like the prep course for like the MCAT before you go in for it, and what your thought on like the prep course for it.
yeah, so when I took it the first time, I did not take a prep course. When I took it the second time, I did enroll in prep course. It was the Berkeley Review. However, I think they were going through a lot of changes because it was during COVID. And first, I want to caveat with the fact that those courses are extraordinarily expensive. So don't feel as though, you're missing out if you can't afford to take one or you don't have the opportunity to take one. I was able to do that because I worked at Genentech. But I will say, like, it helped some, but I still only increased my score 3 points after taking the course. Because at the same time, it's in this environment where it's a group pace. It's not your pace. So it's not specialized to you and your needs. It's the group. It's like general test taking strategies, which 100% help, like the test taking strategies, but like the content review and things of that nature were kind of a waste of my time, other than like the little tricks that they taught, like the test taking tricks. Um, and I think, sort of a testament to that is the fact that I was able to increase my score by 5 points after just doing practice problems. Had I have been not doing the course and maybe just solely focusing on practice problems, I could have, not had to take it 3 times and save that extra $325 to register or whatever it is, on top of the course. So I don't think that courses are absolutely necessary in any way. Although I will say the Berkeley Review books are good. I think those are kind of like a slept on content review book. So, if you're starting out, check it out. I know they still sell the books online. I don't think they offer the course anymore because, like I said, they were going through a lot of structural changes due to COVID. But yeah, those books are pretty good. The Cars is good too.
Thank you, Makaelah. So the next question is, how was your interview at UC DGSOM? And can you talk about the traditionals of going to like traditional way of going to medical school and then the other path?
Yeah, so my traditional interviews happened in, I believe, August. Like they were really early. I was so nervous. I was like, there's no way like UCLA is wanting to interview me. Like I was not anticipating that whatsoever. And the traditional pathway does traditional interviews. So I think I had like 2 MD or like faculty interviewers and maybe 1 student interviewer. I really can't remember. But it was good. It was just a conversation. You get on the call, they're asking you about certain aspects of your application. Why do you want to be a doctor? And I will say I think they do throw not just DGSOM, but med schools in general throw in some interviewers to just see if you get a little, not like riled, but like fazed by some of the responses, because not all the time is a person going to be like, oh wow, that's such a good answer, like thank you so much for sharing. Sometimes it's like, okay, next, or like, okay, and sort of thing. So that was a little bit scary at first, but yeah, so my DGSOM interview, the traditional interviews were fine. I wasn't sure how I did after. I was like, it could have gone either way. It could have been really good or really bad. There was no like in between for me. Because you think about things that you could have said better, and then you think about things that you said well. And you just, wonder which one's gonna stick or not. So yeah, it was fine. And then I actually ended up getting accepted to traditional DGSOM before I got my Prime LA interview. And so then my Prime LA interview was MMI, or multiple mini interviews, situational based, and just asking you like various sorts of questions, like if a patient walks in and their blood pressure is through the roof, but they refuse to take any medication, what do you do in that situation and why? Who do you consult and why? Like type of thing. And it's not always medicine based. Like sometimes it's like, oh, your friend lied to you about texting you back last night. How do you handle that situation? And these are like just like crazy kind of examples, but yeah, those are the structure of the MMI, and I kind of like the MMI better because it's less about you, and sometimes it's difficult talking about yourself, and it's just like more about a situation, which is cool, and they get to see sort of the way that you think and process things. So yeah.
Right. Thank you, Makaelah. So the next question is, how many schools do you end up getting accepted into?
Yes, so I got accepted into DGSOM, UC Davis, UC San Diego, UC San Francisco. I only applied in California because I didn't want to go far again. I think that's, yeah, those are, oh, UC Irvine as well. I got waitlisted at Kaiser as well as Charles Drew University, a part of UCLA. Yeah, I think that those are pretty much it. I didn't end up going through with my application with UC Riverside because I was honestly just burnt out by the process. Yeah, I think that's it. So I got accepted to around 6 or 7.
So are you comfortable of sharing your final GPA and your MCAT score?
Yeah, so my final MCAT score was a 507, and my final GPA, the science overall, I think was a 3.4, and then, or the science GPA was a 3.4, and my overall GPA, I think, was a 3.7.
So the next question is like, if you could go back and retake the MCAT, is there anything you would do different and better to get like prepared for medical school?
Yeah, the last time around, I also did Anki for psych shows. Oh my goodness, psychology and sociology. So that was like life changing. I feel like it helped me like memorize the stuff within a month. And I would only do it for psych soc because I feel like the other ones are more like reading the passage and, actual test taking strategy. So yeah, I would do more Anki earlier on so that I get like a perfect score in that section. And then what else would I would do? Oh, I would just do more content. I mean, more practice questions, less content review.
So another questions from the participants is that they said that they take the MCAT on September 9 and receiving the result on October 9. Is it too late to retake the MCAT?
Is it too late to retake it? Sorry, I just want to clarify the question. So they're worried about.
So basically they had it on September 9th and then the result come on October 9th, so a month after that, and then they want to take it again. So is it too late for like the medical applications for that?
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would assume, so right now the application that's going on is for the entering class of 2024. And so if you're applying for the entering class of 2025, then no, I don't think that that's too late because the application won't open until end of May next year. So yeah, you'll have time to retake, but don't count yourself out already. You never know, the October 9th score might be good enough and you can be chilling. So yeah, honestly, like I know people that take it and then they don't want to lose all their knowledge and they're afraid of their score, so they continue to study. Like I would say don't do that. I think give your brain a rest and, don't address a problem until it's actually a problem. So
another question is, as UCLA has different paths and tracks, what made you decide to apply to primarily path over other like global health equities, like traditional and like overall other pathways?
yeah, so I think first and foremost, as I gave you guys an example a little bit, I am a community-based sort of individual. I believe in investing in your community, giving back to your community. And I know for certain, like I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for some of the community members within Stockton. And also being from Stockton and that community has impacted sort of like my view of the world, my view of medicine, the health disparities that exist. And so I feel forever indebted to my community and I want it to be better and I want to contribute to making it better. And I don't just mean Stockton, I also mean, African American people who suffer the worst health disparities of a lot of races and ethnicities as well. So I feel indebted and like I want to play an active role in helping heal that community. And so, yes, within traditional DGSOM, you still are a killer. They still have a health equity and anti-racist approach to medicine. But I wanted to ensure that I, would be most effective in doing this. And I saw the Prime LA as a way to really like steer me in a direct way to impact my community. And I think the appeal with that as well is that we have to get a master's degree of our choosing to help elevate that mission of serving the under-resourced and the underserved. And yeah, so and from my experience at Genentech, I think I saw it doesn't matter, if you have the most equitable idea in the world and you care so passionately about Black or brown people and you want to make life better for them, it doesn't matter if you cannot relay that in a business way, if you cannot translate that into like dollars earned, because at the end of the day, we live in a capitalistic society. And so one benefit to Prime LA was the fact that I would be able to get my MBA and learn how to talk that language and still bring my diverse perspectives and viewpoints of my family members, my community members to the table in a way that, our typical MBA people can understand. And so I see that as one way that I can really try to make a difference for folks. And so, yeah, that was one or a couple aspects. And I think another aspect is, coming from that sports or like team background, I've always had that cushion of like having what feels like a close-knit family. And I can honestly say that the people in my program, because it's a smaller cohort, there's 18 of us, like they already, after 3 weeks of knowing them, feel like my family. And I knew that there was going to be a more supportive structure versus like the 170 person class. So yeah, I was really interested in maintaining that support from people. And it's definitely happening. And yeah, I thought it was a great option.
Right. Thank you for sharing. So since we're on topic, like serving the minority communities. So I was wondering if like how do you stay connect or like involved with like the Black community at UCLA?
Yeah, so I'm actually calling you guys from Charles Drew University, which is the UCLA affiliated Prime campus, not just Prime, but it's a UCLA health affiliated campus in South LA. And even today we heard from a series of Black physicians who were providing us resources with how to be involved within the Black community here in South LA. And being in diverse places like LA, like Stockton, it's really not hard. You just got to go out into the community and find it. And so just being very explicit, like even for example, for traditional DGSOM, we have to choose an early authentic clinical experience site that we will visit for 12 months in our first year. I think it's like once a month we have to go. And being in LA, there is a large Latino or Latinx community. And I think oftentimes for a lot of the sites that they described in the course catalog, they explicitly called out if it was a predominantly like Latinx serving institution or clinic. And so I just took it upon myself to email the person who's in charge of these sites and their listings and ask like, hey, which of these sites also predominantly serve like Black populations? So just like, I think being outspoken and ensuring that you are putting yourself in those spaces where you can access the communities that you would like. And I don't know if there are, any African American people on the call, but I will say it's only my 3rd week of medical school, and it is exhausting and so disheartening and so tiring to hear how we are constantly the worst when it comes to heart health, diabetes, hypertension, maternal fetal child mortality rates. So it's like, yeah, just brace for that and just know it's going to take a strong amount of us to kind of overcome and get over that mental hurdle of hearing that and actually showing up in the community and actively trying to make it better.
The only thing that I would add is, and I guess I know you personally, is that I think the difference between someone like Makaelah is fearless and she'll do what she needs to do to make it happen. So wherever you are, you could find those communities to be engaged with. I mean, UCLA, yes, is in West LA, but 6 exits away is South Central LA. So it doesn't require some magic thing to do. There's a lot of communities, and you don't need to be in medical school to do that. If you're a student anywhere, or if you live anywhere, you know, Makaelah got involved in her community while she was going to community college in Stockton, doing the conference and a bunch of other stuff. So, if you're gonna say I'm gonna wait until I'm gonna get to medical school to do it, it's a condition. It's you gotta like be fearless. You gotta go for it. You have to be a leader. And people always say, well, wait until I'm a doctor, then I'll do that. And it's not going to happen. And schools could read that pretty easily. So if you say, oh, I want to, uh, go help the underserved communities, but the last 5 years, you haven't done that, then you're probably not going to do it for the next 5 or the next 10 or the next 15 years. And it's kind of a harsh way to say it, but that's the reality of life. They have data on that. They've done data that community college students tendency more go into primary care, going back to those communities. So there's data out there. And so like I said, you don't need to go to medical school to be engaged. And I think Makaelah talked about her journey. She started when she was playing soccer as a freshman at San Joaquin Delta College. So I don't know. I didn't want to embarrass you, but
Right. Thank you for sharing, Makaelah. So another questions I have is like, how do you have like the financial assistant program at UCLA? And I know UCLA have a Merit Scholarship program. And can you talk like about it and like about your financials at UCLA Medical School?
So I didn't qualify for the financial assistance program, which I think is in reference to applying and like taking the MCAT and whatnot. That's because I was working at Genentech and making a little bit more money than would allow me to qualify for that. And then in terms of financials at UCLA, there are a ton of scholarships here at UCLA. So for example, if you're a part of Prime LA, this year we're getting $20,000 each for 5 years of medical school. And there's also merit-based. So that's like just a part of being Prime LA. And then there are also merit-based scholarships. There's like the LA Cares scholarship. There is the DGSOM Impact and Distinction Scholarship. And I think there's another one which is just like tuition only. So the Impact and I think the LA Cares and the tuition one are like they pay your full tuition, merit-based. You do not have to apply. They just take your application and select you for it. And then there is the DGSOM Impact and Distinction Scholarship. I think only 10 people in our class get it, and that's tuition and fees plus a living stipend. So it covers like your rent, your groceries, everything of that nature. And so that's also merit-based. And I'm extraordinarily grateful to be able to say that I was selected to get the Impact and Distinction Scholarship. And like that has just like changed like everything for me, because I was really afraid of like taking out loans and just not having enough money to figure out everything. And it's completely alleviated any worry that I might have. And I feel like these kind of stories like always seem so far away, and like you always think like they don't happen for you or like for people that you know. But I think UCLA is a great place that really tries to equitize the playing field for everybody, like seriously everybody. I think almost everyone that I've spoken to has some sort of scholarship. So yeah, it's not impossible. It is definitely attainable and accessible. You just have to be true to like your mission, like this is a merit-based scholarship that they were able to pick me out from based upon my application and my interview, and seeing if like those two things align. So don't lie, don't kind of like along the lines of what Jubin was saying, like don't say you're community based if you don't have it, because because it's just like that's just gonna automatically disqualify you. And that's not to say you have to be community based to get that kind of scholarship, but just be true to you and what you believe, and you will be considered for what you will be considered.
But also that I would just add is that this was not something that she didn't get. I mean, I know her, so I'm kind of embarrassing her a little bit. She didn't get the scholarship because she was magical or she had some fairy dust on her. She worked for it, and it wasn't like a 6-month thing. It was a 6-year mission. That's what she did for 6 whole years. She didn't wake up and say, "All right, I'm applying to medical school. I should go to a health fair and take blood pressures, and that should be like," no, that's like she designed things. She had the whole athletic thing. Um, and actually that's how we met. Actually, some somebody said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone." I was like, "Oh yeah, I know this guy who played football at Stanford and he's a doctor and it's right up the road." And so that's kind of how her and I met. But she was doing all that stuff, and when she started, and then when she went to presentation mayor, like this is a whole lifetime she did this. It wasn't like a 6-month thing. So, the point of that is, what is your mission? What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What are you interested? Not so much about what do you think the medical, like, I mean, I'm sure that somebody else that as at UCLA spent 5 years in a lab finding out like some molecule, and that is also a good thing to do because we need those kind of people. And I know
Yeah.
some people will sit here and say, all right, well, I'm going to go play soccer, so don't just do what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, what makes you happy, what makes you, and I think that's the most key part of it is that, I mean, the scholarship, they don't give it out to just, it's not, I mean, I mean, I know Makaelah, so I think she is special, but they don't give it to you because you're special. They have to see a track record, and it's not like a 6-month thing.
Yeah.
All right, Makaelah. So I know that you're only in medical school for 3 weeks, but is there any specialty that you're leaning for residency, or like what specialties are like standing out for you right now?
Yeah, that is like the golden question. So like I said, I was originally interested in ortho, but then I worked at Genentech, so then oncology seems cool. And then I was like, ooh, maybe I can combine both and do like surgical oncology. And then I met a colorectal cancer surgeon here, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's interesting too. And then I played with babies last, I think Tuesday, and I was like, oh my goodness, peds seems cool. So I'm all over the place. I don't have a particular answer. I'm open to anything. OB-GYN seems cool. Cardiology, like I'm
It will
literally
change.
open.
It will change for the next 3 years. It will change
Yeah.
every week, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I don't have a straight answer, but my original interest was like ortho, and um I would say oncology might be on the top of my list at the moment, but we'll see how it changes.
All right, thank you, Makaelah. So the next question is from one of the attendees. So they are a program officer at Funding Health Workforce. In experience, where can funds be deployed for young adults pursuing medicine?
Well, I love that someone is on here, actively trying to support the next generation of physicians. So that's great. And in terms of where funds can best be deployed, I would say that's a hard one. I don't think it takes funds to support mentorship. I think you can find genuinely good-hearted people who want to mentor the next generation. I'm more than happy to if it's not like a ton of students. So I'll throw that out there. But I guess I would say this is just from my perspective, like MCAT, like any way you can help people overcome the MCAT in any way, whether that be test taking strategies. Also, I didn't mention when I got to Genentech, I finally had access to a therapist because they give each of their employees free access to therapy. And so I actually was able to find a therapist who specialized in test anxiety and test taking strategies, and just like, visually seeing yourself sitting down for the MCAT, understanding the distinction between your value as a human and a test score, and making those sorts of distinctions. So I would say anything along the lines of the MCAT and supporting like mental health in that process, I think would be amazing. Maybe like test taking strategy therapist, like that was huge for me. So yeah, I would say that.
All right, thank you, Makaelah. So we are on the topic of test taking strategies. So I wonder what test taking strategy that you can like name the top 5 that you use like for your MCAT or your regular like day-to-day studying for medical school.
Yeah. So also to the last question, also you can support pre-med CC, which you're already partially doing by joining, but yeah. And so in terms of test taking strategies, I would say mnemonics, like just like creating something that can stick out to you that you won't forget. So like for example, today, like I'm gonna say something like kind of inappropriate, but this is just like what you have to do to like remember certain things. So to remember like the valves of the heart, one mnemonic that I came up with was TP my ass. Like that sounds a little wild, but you know what you're talking about, and it tells you the structure of the heart and the valves and the order that they're in. And I literally, like, we were in a session today, a clinical skills session, and they were testing us on which valve is which in the heart. And I just remembered, like, TP my ass. Like, those are like the kind of things that you have to do to kind of like make it more real. Like, just make this information more real and more relevant to your life. Like, most people respond well to humor, and to like relatable things. So, I would just say like try to just like spice it up when you can. Like those are the things that you remember the most. So yeah.
Okay, so the next questions from one of the attendees, how do you pick between UCLA and UCSF?
Yeah, so good question. Obviously UCSF is like a world-renowned institution. And I will say that working and living in San Francisco for the last 2 years was interesting. It's expensive, first of all, like it's so extraordinarily expensive to live in and just exist in San Francisco. And also I would say like a majority of the people there are like wealthy, not necessarily like it's not people that are necessarily like aligned with, and I'm not talking about UCSF, like I'm literally talking about San Francisco itself as a city. I don't think it's like a kind of like community that necessarily is very well aligned across the board. There are extraordinarily rich people who work in tech that own like penthouse apartments and like live a posh life, and yet they look outside and see homeless and poor and you know substance abuse afflicted Black and brown people and don't really use their money or power to do anything about it. And I didn't enjoy existing in that environment, and I'm not saying that that doesn't happen in LA, especially Westwood, but I wanted something different. And I think that there is a little bit more diversity in terms of what LA has to offer. And again, I'm not talking about the institutions, I'm talking about the cities themselves, because those were drivers for me. I've also been in Northern California my whole life, so I wanted to like move to SoCal and see something different. Also, you can like actually use the beaches in LA. You can't use the beaches in San Francisco, it's too cold. But in terms of like the institutions themselves, I really liked how so I applied for Prime at both. I got into Prime at both as well. I really like that Prime LA, the master's degree is required, whereas UCSF Prime, it's optional. And I don't know, like, had I had been like, I didn't know if I was going to be burnt out or like what the deal was going to be once I got time for my master's year. And I just felt as though I would rather it be forced upon me than not, so I can actually get it done. And also it's just, I got better financial aid at UCLA. I told you guys about the scholarship. I did get a full tuition at UCSF, but obviously I didn't have the stipend, so that was a huge driver as well. So yeah, and it's still close enough to family, UCLA, that, you know, they can come drive or take a flight if they plan far enough in advance. So all around, I think it was just a good option for me.
Thank you for sharing, Makaelah. So the next question is, what was the writing process like for your personal statement?
Yeah. It was lots of revisions, lots of like, what am I trying to say here? And it was hard because I think I started writing it the first time I took the MCAT, so it was like hard balancing between studying for the MCAT and writing. But I had a couple mentors in medical school that were kind of helping me through the process. And I don't know, I would just say like don't overthink it. Don't try to make it this like storybook, like fictional, you know, poetic sort of thing. But also don't just like dump out facts on a sheet. I think it's like a balance. And yeah, looking back now, I don't know. I feel like that your personal statement obviously very much matters, but I think like there's just more important, like what are you actually like doing? You know, like that informs your personal statement. If you don't have anything, you know, meaningful to you to put in your personal statement, then it's not a good personal statement. So just make sure you have personal things and passionate things to talk about and discuss.
Thank you, Makaelah. So I know it's like at pre-med, we're gonna encounter a lot of bumps, failures and problem that on our journey to medicines. So how do you deal with like failure and how you overcome that?
Yeah, so I had a lot of practice with that, with like I said, the two ACL tears and then the three MCAT attempts. So um yeah, I think eventually you just learn to take it on the chin and keep moving. Yeah, you can give yourself a pity party for, I don't know, a couple days to a week, but at some point you got to move on. Obviously it's much easier said than done. I did, gain a lot of help when I did get therapy at Genentech. I think the biggest thing is just learning to distinguish your value between being a student and being a human. Like you're still a valuable person if you fail at a test. You're still a valuable person if you fail the MCAT. You're still a valuable person if you get rejected from medical school. Like I think, our identity is so tied up in being pre-med and being like these people who are just so dedicated toward what it is that we want to accomplish. And I think just like taking a step back and realizing that you're so much more than all of those things. And making sure that you like honor, your inner being and like what makes you happy and what makes you feel fulfilled outside of pre-med or medicine or whatever it may be.
All right. So the next question is, how do you know you need a gap year before you apply for medical school?
I think only you know that. I will say though, like everyone so I'm one of the younger ones in my prime program. The average age is like 26. I just turned 24 on Monday. And I think there are like two other people in prime that are like 22, 23. So everyone took a gap year, at least one, if not three or four. I think it's normal. It's normalized. Like it's encouraged. You need to figure out who you are outside of school. And
But
I think
also
that allows,
there's also an economic part of it too, right?
yeah. Yeah, some people have to work. Um, some people, yeah, there's lots of different factors. Um, but yeah, I think that, if you can, you should definitely take some time out of school, to just figure out your path and your desires. And I mean, like I worked for all of my gap years, and that's not to say that I still wasn't able to figure out myself. So when I say like take time to figure out yourself, yes, you might still have to do other things to make that happen. But I think it's encouraged and I think it adds to your application, your interview process, because you have more to offer than just, oh, I was like the maps chapter president for 3 years straight. It's like, okay, tell me a little bit more about your life and like why you want to be in medicine and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you, Makaelah. So, one of the next question is, as you know, UCLA is one of the schools that require the preview exam. So, how do you prepare for it?
Honestly, I think they have a mock exam online that you can take. I just like took the practice one, and that was at that point like the least of my worries. Like it was a situational test. You can't really study for it. Like it kind of just is what it is. So I was like, I just got to take, like, that's not something that you can prepare for. Like, I don't know, in my opinion, you got the answer or you don't. And I think they like score it not like right or wrong, but rather like how close to the correct answer were you. So I personally don't believe that you can teach someone to be like intrinsically a good human. So, and that's kind of what it's testing. Um, so I mean, I would say rest assured in the fact that you're a good human with good values and morals and a character. I think that's why I would hope that one might be pursuing medicine. So I would say that's like the least of one's worries.
So as you mentioned, you work in during your undergrad year, you work for a lab for a year. So like how did you look for your research lab? And so what your tips to like, look for lab research?
Yeah, so to be quite honest with you, I don't remember the exact like portal it was, but I think Howard had like an NIH funded sort of like website that you can see all of the NIH funded projects going on at the university. And I just like reached out to the ones that looked pretty interesting. I let them know like I just wanted to see in person what I was learning about in class. And so that's why I decided to do it. But as you can see, I didn't touch a lab after that because it was just not something that I loved. And that's okay. You know, you don't have to love research. You don't have to do research to get into medical school. There's different kinds of research, doesn't have to be wet lab. So I would just keep your options open and know that you don't have to be siloed into one area or another. And I think most institutions have like a catalog or like a repository of their NIH funded sort of project. So I would just say take a look there at your university once you get there. And then I will plug there's another summer research program for community college students via the same program or via the same Center of Excellence at Stanford University that is focused on research. And I actually applied for it, but I wasn't able to do it because I had soccer practice. But that's an option for any CC kids watching as well.
Great, thank you,
Yeah,
Makaelah.
and we've had Miss Anthony come and speak and talk about it. I put that in the link as well. But she'll be back again talking about trying to recruit people. So probably should come and check it out. But I put the link to the program in there.
Okay, so in the presentation, you mentioned about your Costa Rica experience. So I was wondering, like, how did you get in with like that program, and what's your favorite memory and least favorite memory from that experience?
Yeah, so honestly, I just found the program online. I think I did it through International Medical Relief. And luckily, I had support from a family friend to kind of help pay for the cost of the trip because it was expensive. Um, and so yeah, my least favorite part of it was the cost because it's just like ridiculous that you have to pay money to help people. Obviously, there are different ways that you can do that, and ways that you don't have to pay, but yeah, I would say that was my least favorite part. And my most favorite part, I think, was again, the babies. Like we saw so many cute little babies that, you know, had stomach issues or maybe had like a disease from drinking not the cleanest water, and just seeing the physicians care for them and learning, you know, how to kind of do like jungle medicine in a sense, because we were set up in an elementary school. We didn't have all of the appropriate resources or sort of like advances in technology that we have here in the States. So seeing them operate in sort of like an old-fashioned way was really cool. And so yeah, I love that aspect of it.
Thank you, Makaelah. So my next question is, as pre-med, we got volunteering, research, and clinical exposure is what we kind of looking forward to get like experience on. So do you have any clinical work experience during your undergrad? And do you have any tips on finding like paid clinical work to fit undergrad schedule?
Yeah, so paid clinical work that I did was medical assisting during the pandemic. And I think I got lucky in doing that because I no longer had soccer because of the pandemic. So I just feel the time I usually would have spent playing soccer with working in the clinic. So I think it's hard. It's a balancing act, but it's not impossible to find paid clinical work. Also the place that I worked at didn't require a medical assistant certificate. And there are clinics out there that are like that. I don't think scribes need a certificate in every setting as well. So I would just say, if you can fit it into your schedule, then yeah, find time for it. And I think, you rattled off the checklist. I would just advise, like, don't do things because they're on the checklist. Like, do them because you're genuinely, like, interested in them. Like, yes, it informs our decisions at the end of the day. But, like, even for example, like me, like, I tried research, but I didn't force myself to go back into it because, like, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it, Like, I could have went into a lab at Genentech, but I chose not to. And was that maybe a risky decision? Yeah, sure. But it's like I got to, like, experience a whole different side of medicine because of that. So don't just do stuff because it's, like, the advised way of doing it. Like, do stuff that, genuinely, like, piques your interest.
Thank you, Makaelah. So as you mentioned a little bit like earlier that you work at a medical assistance like during your senior year of high school. So I wonder like during your gap year, do you continue to be like medical assistants or do you work as a different job?
Yeah, so during my gap year, that's when I worked at Genentech in clinical operations only. I did work as a caretaker at home for a little while, like both in undergrad and then a little bit into my gap year. So that was like some sort of like clinical-ish work that I did outside of Genentech, but that was it.
So I think you mentioned a little bit in your presentation about your leadership's education for future physicians. Can you talk more about the program?
Yeah, so it's a really amazing program hosted by, like I said, through the Stanford Center of Excellence in Medical Education. And um, it it was just like, I mean, Marcella came and talked to one of my community college classes, and I was sold the fact that it was a Black woman coming to present, and it was like everything that I felt as though I needed to be a part of in order to, you know, make a difference in medicine. So I just went ahead and did it. And yeah, I mean, like I said, you identify a problem in a community of your choosing. She gives you the tools and the resources in a Saturday seminar sort of format to sort of address these issues. And yeah, you go from there, and it has various uh processes that you need to follow, but you can see all of that within the link that Jubin just sent. And I'm sorry, I'm actually going to transition to Zoom on my phone because the room that I'm in is actually going to close. So I'm listening and still available to answer questions. I'm just going to log on to Zoom on my phone really quickly.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would also tell you is that the application opens August 31st and closes October 7th. And I know that Miss Anthony is going to come and speak, I think, in November, but she's going to talk about the summer program mostly. The LEAP program, I know that when Makaelah went through it, it was in person, but now they've been doing it Zoom and in person, so you don't really need to be close unless you know how to get there. Obviously, like if you're in, I don't know, Florida or Vermont, like that would be really far. But I know that this cycle they had a couple people from LA, and then they would come up as a group. I think twice they had to come up. So hint, hint, apply and make it work. And the other thing is also is if you can't work, if you're working on weekends or a lot of other stuff going, it like don't do it. Don't try to do it because everybody else has done it, but make sure that you do it and make it work and take advantage of the opportunity. Any other question?
Are you
No.
Yeah. Okay, Makaelah, so there's another questions for you. So how diverse is UCLA Medical School?
Yes, so UCLA Medical School is, I think, actually one of the most diverse in the nation. And that's not just in terms of like race and ethnicity. I would say in terms of age. I would also say in terms of like disability status. I think we even have like some veterans in our class. We have a guy that finished law school and then decided to apply to medical school. Like, it's not just race and ethnicity, it is so much more than that. And I haven't even met everyone yet. This is just me also speculating from the group me, but I mean, from their introductions and um, who I met at second look. Yeah, I think UCLA definitely prioritizes diversity. They don't just, talk about it, they actually do stuff about it. So I think it is definitely a super diverse school.
I just put the link in the chat where you could pull up and get every single data point for UCLA Geffen School of Medicine for the last, I think, 20 years. So you could look at MCAT, GPA, school, like it's hundreds and hundreds of pages. So you could pull that up. You could also look at the MSTAR too, but
Yeah, I would just advise that with the MSAR, like if I were to listen to that, like I shouldn't have got into Geffen based on like my MCAT score alone. So just take everything with like a grain of salt. A lot of the metrics that you see online, I don't know where they come from. Not like the MSAR ones, like those are like validated by like AAMC and whatnot, but your typical like Reddits or like Student Doctor Network, like just be careful with what you believe.
Okay, another question is, how do you balance like between school and your, basically your life as medical school student?
Well, I haven't necessarily like started yet. So in my summer program, we haven't had like super academically rigorous activity. But some things that I did take with me from the MCAT is just like, still eating like, normal square meals a day. However many that may be that you prefer. I personally like eating like 2 meals a day. And then exercising, like don't put off exercising just because, I don't know, maybe you didn't review your test or like you still have like other obligations. And then like I said, the therapy thing, and just like other things a part of like your wellness that like, like make you feel fulfilled and happy. Just don't give those things up is what I'm gonna hopefully hold myself accountable to in medical school. And I don't know, maybe I could like come back to pre-med CC and tell you guys if I was able to uphold those things, which I hope that I will be able to. And I'm sure I'll be able to if I put my mind to it and, have plenty of people keeping me accountable here as well.
Yeah, we would love to have you back to share your tips on how to balance your life as your medical school students. So if you guys have any other questions, please put into the Q&A. And I'll continue to ask Makaelah.
Yeah, and I'm also going to drop my email in the chat. So if you guys are ever like curious after the fact, feel free to hit me up there and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay. So Makaelah, I do have a question. At some middle school, there are, school with pass or fail grading, and then others require like letter grade. So is UCLA a pass or fail, or is it more of letter grade?
Yeah, so UCLA is a pass or fail, which is again another big reason why I chose it. Although I will say I think almost all schools in California are pass or fail.
So yeah, well, it's really pass, no pass. They try to get away from the F word is what they call it. And that's even in our rotations as well. It's just pass or no pass, I believe. And I don't even think we get designation for like honors. And that's just to sort of like alleviate and mitigate any bias that can arise when it comes to grading, especially people from different sorts of backgrounds than say like your attendings or things of that nature.
So another questions, I know you mentioned about your GPAs like earlier, but can you talk about your GPA and like how did you see like your GPA doing in your process of application?
Yeah, so when I got to community college, I was getting solid Bs in every single one of like my science and math courses. Again, because I had to adjust to like the high school to now college sort of transition. And you know, even though they were Bs, like I was still like disappointed with that because you know you get to college and everyone tells you, oh, if you don't have all A's, like you're not going to get into medical school. So yeah, that was definitely hard. But like I said, I really benefited at the community college level because in my small classes, I was really able to sort of have my teachers assist in sort of figuring out like what works for me as a student. You know, I started creating like my own test at the community college level, and then I took that with me when I transferred to Howard, and I was able to then get all A's while at Howard. And I think, you know, it's just like being able to show a progression and like an upward trend is really important to med schools. Because honestly, like in my interviews, like people ask me like, oh, how did you improve so much? Or like, how did you start going from like getting straight B's to now straight A's? And so I think, you know, just showing that you saw a problem, you did something to address it, and you didn't let it discourage you is more important than like the actual letter grades, the actual numbers that appear on your transcripts or your MCAT score or whatever it may be.
Thank you, Makaelah. So as you know, like I saw like a lot of pre-med and medical students using Anki, like the app to like studies. I just wonder if you use it.
Yeah, so the only section when waiting for the MCAT, and I really didn't like fully start using it until my third time around of taking it. But that really helped me do well on that section. So I'm sure that I'll start using it more like actually in medical school. I think I'm more of a flashcard kind of person, so yeah, I look forward to like using it. And again, if I come back to talk with you guys, I'll let you know if it's a good option or, you know, what other people in my class might be using that might be better. So.
Well, thank you, Makaelah.
I think we're gonna let you go.